Welcome, welcome, welcome to Narrate Your Story TV. This is the show that we do every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's right. Every Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So who am I? My name is Dr. Christy Ibuchukwu, and I help women create memorable stories through presentations to help them enroll their ideal clients with ease. And when I'm not doing this, ask what I do. In today's conversation, you want to grab your best friend, grab your friend, grab any other woman that you know of, because this is a show that you have got to watch. In today's conversation, we're talking about finding kind love after abuse, not just any love, finding kind love after abuse. Whether we are talking about in Africa, whether we are talking about in Asia, whether we are talking about in Europe or in America, we all, as women, go through a whole lot. And we can learn from each other. That's what show is all about. As I bring to you women from all across the globe to share with you experiences, their life experiences, and how you can get the nuggets and the lessons through their journey. Today is no exception. Today, I'm talking to my guest star, Rosie Aiello. After executing an international escape from a 25-year domestic violent relationship, she's an author, a podcast host, international multi-award-winning entrepreneur. She's a coach, and she coaches women to empower themselves to believe they deserve to be treated with kindness and guide them to find the kind love of their life, just like she did. Now, listen, anytime we are doing this show, it really is to empower that person, that woman that may be watching this either today, tomorrow, or 20 years from now to get the lesson. Please help me and welcome my next guest star, Rosie Aiello. Welcome to the show, Rosie.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Christy. It's just a thrill to be with you.
Thank you, thank you. And so tell people who don't know who you are. Who is Rosie?
Rosie Aiello, my Italian heritage here. Rosie Aiello is someone who reinvented herself after being in that abusive relationship for 25 years and created a brand new life for herself that, as I look back, I could have never guessed even 10 years ago that could be me. And I just like to say I'm an example of what's possible when you learn the right steps and that you can create a joyful, productive life, and you can find the kind love of your life.
You know, you and I go a long way. You probably don't remember me, but I remember a few years ago we met at a conference at John Block's conference, and here we are a few years later.
Yes.
And I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you. Tell us, you are now introduced, not everywhere, all across the globe, as this multi-award-winning entrepreneur. How did you get to be this brilliant? And I've always said, oftentimes, we know people when they have accomplished something, but we really don't know the journey that took them there. We don't know how they got to be there. And it is in the journey that we learn the greatest lesson. Take us back to where it all began for you.
Yeah, as you had mentioned, I was in an abusive relationship. I was married in the Middle East. I lived about half the time, 12 years in Saudi Arabia and about 12 years in Beirut, Lebanon. And then one day, my daughter, who was a junior at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon, came to me and she said, "Mom, You got to get me away from my abusive father. And so within 4 months, I planned the escape of our lives. And God was watching over, because I can't even tell you what stress I was under. He was always there. And, packing in the bathroom when he was just behind the other wall, not having electricity, and having to take the boxes out and putting them in my trunk, and then taking them to a friend's house, and then ordering the shipment. And then the day came when the taxi driver showed up, and my daughter slipped in behind the driver, and I sat next to her, and my husband was in the front seat. All three of us were going to the United States, but I knew only one was going back. We flew, we landed in, Beirut doesn't have direct flights to San Francisco, so we went Paris, and then Paris, San Francisco. My brother helped me plan the escape, and my brother was going to be meeting us there to pick us up, to pick my daughter and myself up. And I knew exactly where my brother was going to be when those gates opened up. And when they opened up, my daughter and I took our luggage carts and we pulled them behind my brother. And it was the first time I ever felt safe in 25 years. And I was so terrified. I told my brother, I had already planned this, asked my brother to tell him, my husband, that I needed some time alone. I couldn't even tell him I was leaving him forever. I was just so terrified. And my brother did. And when he came back, the three of us turned our backs, walked out of the airport, leaving my husband completely stunned that we had just left and I wasn't ever coming back.
Wow. I had to go back, because this is almost the end of the journey for you. But let me go back, for the interest of those people. Somebody might actually be going through the same thing right now. And by listening to us, I want them to get the nuggets, the lesson from this. So you married somebody while you were in the United States, and the person was from Lebanon. Is that correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and then you found all of you moved, you and the person, all three of you moved to Lebanon. Is that correct? So
we moved to Saudi Arabia
how
first,
you
then Lebanon. Mm-hmm.
So say that again.
We were in Saudi Arabia and then Lebanon. So about 25 years in the Middle East, in those two countries.
Okay, but how did you get to leave United States to move to Lebanon? Can you walk us through there from beginning?
So we met at the university at Berkeley. That's where we met. And after we got married, he was already working in Saudi Arabia. So after we got married, I had a extremely successful career in Silicon Valley. I was in charge of strategic planning for a major international tech firm. And I left my family, my friends, and my career to be with this man. And how hindsight is so great, Dr. Christy, but at the time you don't notice things. I mean, even on the day of our wedding, the day at the reception, it was time to do our dance. And he was talking to somebody, and I just, called his attention. It's like, well, it's time, because, it's like everything's cute. It's like, okay, you got to do this, got to do that. And I just remember he gave me the dirtiest look. And as we were dancing, my heart was just in my stomach. I was just putting on this smile, but I felt like tears coming down. And in our life from the very beginning was just verbal abuse, put me down, insults, anything to just that I felt crushed, but I didn't know the language of abuse. I didn't know I was abusive. I was married 18 years before I even knew I was in an abusive relationship. I had no vocabulary. I didn't know. Just by chance, when we were in the United States, I went into a bookstore and I got a book called Walking on Eggshells. Now, that's about bipolar or borderline, but it had a bibliography, which led to another book, which saved my life. It's called The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans. And she and I are now really good friends. And then it was like reading my autobiography. It's like, oh my God, his behavior. When you think a woman thinks she's going crazy, right? And then you find out that his behavior was about him. But I lost myself. He would sit me down and lecture me for 3 or 4 hours about how horrible I was, and that if I just do this and just do that and just apologize, then things will be better. And I learned early on as a surviving mechanism, but I wasn't conscious of that. It was just an unconscious survival, that if I spoke up and he would get angrier. So I learned to be quiet. I learned to stay mute, because it was like adding fuel to the fire. And so I just became smaller and smaller and smaller. And when my daughter was maybe 8, 9, very young, we'd be sitting around the table and he'd start on my case. And she would say, "Papa, that's not very nice. You know, you shouldn't talk to Mama that way." And so I used to call her Mama's little lawyer. And I felt horrible. My 9-year-old daughter's defending me, but I knew if I opened my mouth, it would make things worse. But she just saw me as a mother who couldn't stand up to her, to her husband. And then when she was like 14 and adolescence, right? When kids just act just perfectly, right? When there's that independence and they're pushing and pulling. Well, he didn't like, now she wasn't just a little yes girl. Yes, Papa. She had a mind of her own. And he started to treat her the way he was treating me.
Wow.
But I still didn't know what it was. I just thought it was me, that I was the bad mother, which he would tell me. I didn't know how to discipline my child. I didn't know how to do anything. I was always wrong. No matter what I did, I was wrong. I remember days when, we'll fold my shirts this way, and I'd fold them all nice and neat that way. And then he would open the cabinet door and just throw them all out and said, "This is not what I wanted." So I was like, every time he set a goal, and I would get closer to the goal, then he would just change the goal. So, and I was so successful in business. And this is the whole thing. These are smart women. And then they think, what's wrong with me? The thing is, there's nothing wrong with you. But we got into these abusive relationships that just whipped our brain around. And it's extremely devastating. I had depression and PTSD when I arrived back to the United States.
So now help me understand now. You are in a foreign country. Is Sonny his own biological, is it his biological daughter or a stepdaughter?
No, this is his biological daughter. And it's a good question. I'm glad you brought it up. So in the Middle East, custody automatically goes to the father until they turn 18. So it doesn't matter. It's not like here where people get divorced and there's these custody battles. And so there's no custody battle. So I knew, I finally discovered before she turned 18, she was about 15, 16, when I discovered through reading Patricia's book, The Verbally Abusive Relationship, that we were in this abusive relationship. And I told her then, but I knew for a long time I was very unhappy. I didn't know why, but I just can't live like this. But I also knew that I couldn't leave her, because if I left her, I would have lost her, because he would have all the power behind him. And then it would have been kidnapping. And I don't know. You need to hear all the stories. So I made a conscious decision to stay until she turned at least 18. And then she was starting university. So we actually stayed a couple more years until she told me, "Mom, get me out of here." But there, I made that choice to stay, because I didn't want to lose her. I could have never left without my daughter.
Which is really, you brought up a good point. And oftentimes, I've gotten to interview a lot of women on this show. And oftentimes, most women stay, for the most part, because of their children. Most women stay for their own children. And they go through a lot and they sacrifice for their own children. But let me bring this thing back to ask you, before going to Saudi Arabia, and I'm asking this thing for our viewers because we never know who's watching. As you know, every time I do this show is to have somebody out there. Before you left going to Saudi Arabia, were there warnings? As you look back now that you've been through that journey, grown through that journey, and look back now, were there signs before even the wedding, before even you left the country? Did you have relative of his? Maybe there's something you could have picked up.
The answer is yes. There were clear signs, but I was not and I'll explain what they were, but I was not in tune to myself. I wasn't listening to my intuition. I just wasn't listening to my gut, basically. I wasn't listening to my gut, because when women get into these relationships, there's a lot of love bombing, and then you think you can't get out because now it's getting too close. But he was what I used to even say this to his face. I go, he was the kindest man, or I don't want to use the word kind, but he was like the best guy I'd ever been with and the worst, especially during the marriage. Like, there was so many good parts of him, just so many that were really nice. We had the same values, and wanted children, and blah blah blah. I mean, so many things. Our work ethic, things like that. And then there's this other side that, again, I couldn't identify this, right? But just the warning signs is that when I was working in corporate in Silicon Valley, he would call me up and ask me to do something for him, and I didn't have a private office, and he would want it done right away. And if I didn't, then he would call me back the next day. And again, I'm in a cubicle, and I go, I'm working. And he would get really angry at me. So there were already signs of his anger. And even, listen to this, even during the wedding ceremony, we wrote our vows. And I don't remember all of our vows, but one part of our vows, I said, and slow to anger and quick to forgive. So I already had it there, but I just thought, whatever. A week before we were going to get married, he wanted to call off the whole wedding for, I don't even remember what the reason was. A week before the wedding. And so, I'm crying, and I talk to my father, and my father talks to him, and, whatever, he calms down. So that became a pattern where he would blow up, get upset, and then things would get calm. He'd blow up, get upset at something I did, said, whatever, how I behaved, I looked the wrong way, whatever. So there were so many signs of his behavior that I would make excuses for. And this is such an important lesson I want women to hear. If you are making excuses, oh, well, he's not like this all the time. Well, no one's perfect. He's such a good father, but then you have the but. It's a huge red flag, because you're trying to justify bad behavior. You may think you don't deserve it, or good behavior, or you think there'll be nobody else that you can be with, or you might think, I can't stop it now. Like when I was going to get married, I can't stop it now. And I just, how can I do that? So we kind of get in ourselves into this cage of believing things that aren't true, and get sucked in, and then you just get stuck. And so it's very hard.
If you look back right now, do you think there's any part of you that went ahead with the wedding, even though subconscious mind is telling you, I don't like this, but I can't really tell what is wrong? Or is it because you think there's any part of you that said, what if I stop it now? What would everybody say?
Well, there was a combination of that. I
Mhm.
think there was a combination. I just like, it's like, oh, well, I can't stop it. You know, I just can't. And that was a very fleeting thought. And I thought, well, you know, I can be better. I mean, he's got some valid points, right? You know, it just starts to go back onto you. So it's very easy to rationalize his behavior. It's very easy to rationalize your behavior, because, you know, inside you want to make things work, you want to make things right, and you'll say things like, well, no relationship is perfect. I mean, people get angry, that's a normal thing. So you see, it's all of that, but then inside it just doesn't feel right, but you just can't put the pieces together because you don't have the vocabulary. We were already together 2 years by then, so it was like 20 years before I even knew the word abuse or domestic abuse. I mean, and then when I came back, I still learned more vocabulary. I think you know a lot more today, but, you know, we're talking, you know, now quite a few years ago, right?
And I know as women, you know, I guess we can say we love relationship. We love being in a relationship. It feels good. We want that companion. But
That's,
I don't want to miss the point here because then again, people are watching. A lot of women are watching. And my hope is always to give them that nugget from your story. Now, you mentioned love bombing. There may be some people that don't know what love bombing. Can you take the time to explain to us what love bombing is?
yeah, thank you for asking me to explain it. I apologize. I should have explained it at the time. Well, what they'll have a tendency to do is just do all these sweet, kind things. They may give you flowers. They may take you on trips. They may tell you, you know, all these wonderful things. You're the most wonderful woman I've ever been to. They may give you jewelry, take you to nice dinners. They'll just all these things like, well, you know, what woman wouldn't like that, right? It's like, oh, feels so good. He likes me. You know, I'm the center of his attention. All these things, and it does generate those feel good hormones. So he's pumping all that feel good hormones in you, so you're just pumping up with that. It's like, that feels really, really good. And then when you aren't expecting it, then the bomb blows up. And then you're trashed and you're put down, and then maybe he'll apologize. Mine never apologized. But I apologize. So it was always, no matter what it was spinned around and twisted so that I was always wrong. So that's another sign. You know, he's always twisting it. He's the logical one and you're the emotional one. So if you hear those kinds of terms, or he's accusing you, and you start to doubt yourself. So now this is what happens, Dr. Christine. This is why these relationships are so hard, is that you get what's called the trauma bond. Now, what the trauma bond is that now you got sucked into this sort of love put down relationship, and your reality has been distorted. You don't know what the real truth is because he has usually isolated you. This is another major key factor in these kinds of relationships. Now, I was really isolated. I went especially to Saudi Arabia. I couldn't drive there. I was away. I left my family, my friends, my career, everything. So, but here in the United States, right? They get isolated. They don't want you to work. Oh, I want you to be home, you know, and they'll reason it out why you should stay home. And then, well, you don't want to go out and see your friends, you know, I'll miss you. And it seems like he kind of couches it in a loving, you know, like, oh, I want to be with you, but it's controlling when you can't live your life. So this kind of, and then you get stuck, and then you can't, your world gets smaller and smaller.
And also, what I'm hearing you saying in so many ways is really when someone else start making you feel where you are, that feel not just uncomfortable, but inadequate to the extent where you constantly feel there's something wrong with you. Even though you know you are not at fault, but you're constantly finding a way to admit the wrongdoing, even though you know within you haven't done anything wrong, or even doubting yourself so much so, did I do it? Did I not do it? I mean, at a point, you just give in, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oftentimes, as women, not some men, but we're talking about women, but oftentimes, it really, like you said, it's a way of control. Number one, sometimes they can get you away from your friends. And for you, in that case, you're in a whole new country that you didn't know anybody. So you
Right.
didn't have families, you didn't have friends, you didn't have colleagues. There was absolutely nobody
Right.
to talk to. And I don't know how, did you make new friends while you were in that country?
I did. Yeah. But so I lost my whole support system. Do you see? So I made friends, but it was very hard because every time I mean, I'm not a woman, you probably can tell, who just sits around and does nothing. So I worked in his company. I did anything doing with finances or analysis or whatever. I did that. I created his whole accounting system within his company. He had a small boutique engineering firm. And I was active. I became active with women's groups, the American Women's Group, International Women's Group. And it was always a chore for me to get out of the house. I mean, he would just make it so difficult for me. He would go out with his friends. He would go out to dinner with his friends. But every time I wanted to go out and do something, whatever, he would just make it difficult. Like, why are you leaving? Why do you have to do that? And constantly challenged me. And I was always on the defensive. Like I would put down, I felt like I had to defend everything I did, everything I had to do. And so it got exhausting, always exhausting. And so, yeah, you give in. And so I made friends. We had friends over, but usually they were all, I had, I will say American and Western and let me just put it this way. I had a lot of friends who were not his friends or the wives of his friends, but none of my friends did he would maybe like the wife, but he didn't like the guy. So we didn't really socialize with them, but we always socialized with his friends and their wives and stuff, but not with mine. And so again, it was very hard to make deep connections with people, and I had to just find reasons to get out of the house. Now, when I moved to Lebanon, it wasn't any easier. I could drive there, but I just want to share this because I'm just thinking about it now. But I was seeing a therapist there, which is a whole nother story, and she just said, just do some volunteer work. And so I started to volunteer at St. Jude Center for Children in Beirut, Lebanon, and he couldn't argue with me to go there, right? Because it was with children and I was doing something good. But he would sabotage in Saudi Arabia, in Lebanon, with me trying to go and do work. He would either say, "Oh, well, no, that's not good enough for you." He would like make it sound like it's a good thing, but it was like, "Oh no, you should charge much, much more for that." So I would get priced out of the market. Everything I tried to do, he would just sabotage. I studied one of my undergraduate degrees. I had an undergraduate degree in French and economics, and I have an MBA in finance. And so I was studying, oh, well, I'll teach French. So I went with the government of France in Lebanon and studied again to re-up so I could really study and I could teach anywhere in the world. I did everything. I was one of the top students. Then it came the day, 2 nights for the government test, to pass the test. He just wouldn't let me go. My daughter was 10 years old, and he says, "Well, you've got to stay home and watch her." And we had a live-in help. He wouldn't let me go to take the test.
And so, and I want everybody watching to listen to this, because we are now globally. It's almost like the whole world is on our palm right now. We get to travel all over the world now. That's the way the world is. And so you can be married anywhere in the world. We're not just Lebanon. It can be in Africa. It can be in Asia, anywhere. And so what I'm getting is that before you make that decision to get out of the environment that you are so familiar with, that you are comfortable, and make that commitment to move yourself because of relationship to a different country where you are quite unfamiliar, to really do what would you say?
Well, it depends on the person, because even in the United States, men isolate their women, right? Or women who are in abusive relationships are isolated. So it's not the location as opposed to what he does. When you're in an abusive relationship, one of their key factors are they isolate you. They make it very difficult for you to see your family. So start to see those signs before. Do I have to get his permission to see my family? Is he making it really hard for me to go see my friends? So a lot of things that I'll tell my clients is like, what are you doing now? Because I only work with women who are single before they start dating, because I want to get them, so they don't get into another toxic relationship. So it's like, what are you doing now that you love doing? To remind yourself, well, I go out with my friends and we have dinners and all that. Well, you can do that after you get married. And if he says, oh, I'm going to miss you if you go out, don't go out. That's not because of love. That's not kind love. That's controlling.
That's controlling.
Well, you see, so it's the behavior you need to focus on. But I didn't know any of this until I read that book and then started learning and reinvented myself. I didn't know anything. And that's why I'm so glad you're doing this, because I don't want women to get into a toxic relationship to begin with. And I definitely don't want women to get in another toxic relationship, and that having kind love after a toxic relationship is possible. So there's several layers to this. And one is really looking at the behavior of the other person. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit. And the other thing is that, we are in a dynamic thing, but it's just like, make sure that you, as much as you say you love the person, can you live in whatever environment that is? And you have to be honest with yourself. I'm kind of adventurous, and I love cultures. So it was an easy yes from that angle for me to say yes, because I love people and getting to know them. But more importantly than where, because in the United States and Canada, wherever, I've talked to women all over the world, like you have, abuse is everywhere. And what's important is, what is the behavior to notice? I already gave some red flags, some signs before or during the relationship that you can expect. But what is the person's behavior? How's that person showing up? For example, like if I ask my clients, I go, what do you love doing that you are doing now? And to keep a list of that and focus on it, so you don't have to give up when you get married. Oh, well, I like to go to the movies. I like to go out with my friends and have a cup of tea or go dancing. I like to walk on the beach, whatever it is. And then when it's time, it's like, oh, honey, I'm going to be going out with my friends. We're going to go to out to dinner. Oh, you're going to leave me? Oh, don't leave me. I'm going to miss you so much. Stay here. Won't you just stay? Why are you going out? And they'll just kind of pester you, and it'll sound it's kind of loving. But let me tell you, in a healthy relationship, they'll tell you, have fun. I'll see you later, right? But when they're behaving that way, that's not loving. That's not kind love. It's controlling. It's controlling behavior. But sometimes it seems like, and then you start to feel guilty, and then they'll do it so much that you just get exhausted, and once again, you give in.
You acquiesce, yes. Absolutely. And what I'm hearing you saying, and I love that we're having this conversation today because I get to talk to other women as well. And oftentimes, it's not when people have to get you away from your loved ones, from your friends. And it's not like you're going out for all day, all week. It's just going to have whatever. You're going to have fun with your friends. You're going out with your girlfriends. You're going to visit families. And oftentimes, when they get you away from it, it's a sign that if something really happens, there may not be anyone to be around to help you. People wouldn't even know what's wrong in most cases. And I've talked to some people, and oftentimes what happens is that after they pull you away from these individuals, right? Number one, they're afraid that you're going to mention what's happening inside, outside, and they don't want you to say anything. They don't want anybody to know. That's number one. Number two, that maybe those on the outside, for example, if you get moved into a country that you are not familiar with, and you get to become friends with the indigents, they may tell you the things that you may not know about the person you married or the culture that you married into, which will be maybe against him, and he doesn't want you to do that. That's part of control, like you were talking about. That's part of control. But let's go back and talk about finance, which is, I think it was Dr. Laura said, if you leave, anytime that you leave your finances in the hands of your spouse, you're finished. I said, what? But it makes a lot of sense. So how was your finance for you? How was it for you? Was he controlling your finance as well? Or were you able to control your own finance?
So I love this question, and I talk about it a lot. I mentioned I have an MBA. I have an MBA in finance. So I know a lot about money management and everything else. I've managed $1 billion companies. But when it came to my husband, when we moved overseas, now I'm an American. He had a green card. And then he eventually, so he was never a US citizen. Mm-hmm. And then he eventually let go of the green card. Now, for people who don't know, but for the United States, wherever you live in the world, you still pay US taxes. You may have an exclusion, but you still pay US taxes. So under that umbrella, he said, well, because you're an American, I don't want to put you on any of the accounts. I had my accounts from before marriage, but I don't want to put you on any of the accounts. Yeah. So the only account I was on was the checking account, which he fed from the investment account, the insurance account, his savings account. Mm-hmm. Now, I would sit with the investment bankers from Credit Suisse and the German bank, Deutsche Bank, and Lebanese bank. I could talk business with all of them. I could analyze the stocks with all of them and everything else. I knew how much he had, and I would have intelligent conversations and support him on that. But my name was never on there. And on top of that, so when we got divorced, well, I'll tell you that later, but not only that, so, and I felt this, here I was, an independent woman. I was doing really well, working, and all of a sudden, I didn't have any money in my name. Not over there, right? I didn't have any money in my name. And remember I told you I worked for him? I didn't get paid until, 6 years into it. All of a sudden he decided to pay me. And he decided on the salary, which, okay, he's a boss, he decided on the salary. But I never saw a check. He decided where that money went to, because I had a home in the United States before we got married. And so, he says, well, your money will go towards that. So all of this, now it gets worse. Let me tell you.
So hold on before you move forward. So you were working for him. You worked for him for 6 years. and you never get paid. You got paid on the 6th year.
Correct.
How were you living? If you have to buy little things that
gave me
women
money.
like to buy for themselves, how
He
did you live?
gave me money. You know, he gave me money, but I hardly bought anything for myself. And that was also interesting. He would buy me a $500 purse. But if I bought myself a $100 purse, well, why did you spend that? And he would always get on my case about the money I was spending for the groceries and everything else. And I said, well, why don't you show me what you're spending and I'll show you what I'm spending, right? And like I was hiding anything, but it was like I had to substantiate everything. So, but yeah, he would give me money and I would, I could get my hair done and but it was like I had to beg for everything. I had to substantiate everything that I was doing.
And I want women to listen. I want those people that are listening to pay attention to this, because that's a control issue.
Yes.
If it's not you, it's going to be another woman.
Yes.
Now, I don't know that it has to do with another man. That would be the case. Of course, being a woman, you married to him.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, does this, let's come out a little bit and go to Sonny, your daughter. How did that impact this behavior that he was dishing out to you? How did that impact Sonny? Did she experience it? Did she see everything? How was she feeling? How was that impacting her in life, with friends, at school overall?
So, she, again, she didn't know because I didn't know for a long time, but she had that sense. Remember when I told you she was 9 years old and she became mama's little lawyer. So she knew something was wrong, right? And she overheard things. But I remember her. In Lebanon, it's very common for children to live with their parents while they're going to the university and until they get married. That's just the culture there.
Yes.
But
it's culture in most third world countries or developing countries. Yes.
Right. So, but I just begged him, and the university was pushing, right? Not just for me, but for all freshman students. When she went to the University of American University of Beirut, to have her live on campus. And I thought, oh my gosh, so finally I got him to accept that she could live on campus. And, when you're going to the university in America, I mean, it's just like, oh, freedom and stuff like that.
Yes.
Well, he started to stalk her on Facebook and saw that it was 1:00 in the morning and she's on Facebook. And so then he would call her up and scream at her. But even before that, he would come into her bedroom when she was living at home and scream at her, why aren't you doing your homework? I mean, she was just terrified. So there's all these elements of how she saw him treating me. And then as she became that adolescence and was trying to separate and become her own adult, he was just crushing her. He would pick her up from her friends and the whole way home, he was screaming at her. Remember I told you he would sit me down and scream at me for hours on end. He did the same thing for her. He would get us locked in so we couldn't leave. She couldn't leave the house, the car, right? So, when, then that day came and she begged me to take her away from her abusive father. Well, to this day, it's been 12 years. She's still suffering, Dr. Christie. She has complex PTSD, and complex is identified when children grow up with this abuse. So yes. She has a lot of struggles. She's a very intelligent young woman, yet she has struggles to, she's afraid all the time. She doesn't know what her father's going to do. I mean, there's so many stories. I've been stalked. I can't even tell you the decades of being stalked by him, but it has impacted her. And this is so important and this is part of my mission, and we were talking before, so I'm going to go into that. There's been studies by different organizations, and on average, there are 1.9 billion women aged 15 and above who have experienced some form of abuse, from verbal abuse to sexual trafficking. And that means, and 0.6 billion children, so under the age of 15.
Wow.
So we're talking a third of the world population affected by this kind of behavior. And what happens? I'm a disruptor, and I want to be a disruptor. We have to disrupt the pattern because it goes from generation to generation to generation, right? So if we don't break this chain of abuse, children become like my daughter, totally unable maybe at times to function. They become either abused. If they get into a relationship, they become abused, or they become abusers if they don't get help. And I see it all the time. And it's a massive worldwide issue. It's worse than all the wars. It's worse than all the gun crimes. It's this.
And you are so right, because again, as we are doing this, is really to help anybody that is watching this show. And this is what this platform is all about. It's not just about telling the story, it's the lesson that we learn from the story. It's the lessons that we learn from the journey. It's being able to impact other women. It's being able to impact other young girls, whether they are boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, to be able to recognize when that is no longer love, when that is control, when that person is trying to pull you away from friends, from colleagues, from your families, when that person is not allowing you to have a voice, when that person is constantly making you feel like you are not enough. Everything you do, there's something wrong with you. And at a point, you're beginning to doubt yourself. I interviewed a medical doctor who said that when a trauma happens to a child, sometimes that child, even though they are grown, they will be in a grown-up body, but still in a child's body.
That's right. Child's mind.
Child's mind.
Yes.
They will be in an adult body, but still in a child's mind. In other words, they are stuck, according to the doctor. That child is still stuck at whatever age they were at the time they experienced the trauma. How mind-boggling that is. So you have a 60-year-old in your mind. You're looking at this person. You go, "Oh, how could he be doing that? He's old enough." But sometimes the person doesn't know any better, because they are still. If it happened at 4 years old, if it happened at 6, 7, 10 years old, they're still in their mind 10 years old. And so I think it's so important these days. And I see it every time. I hear it every time. I cannot sit here and tell you that I've experienced any trauma. But at the same time, I've experienced things in relationship. I've gotten over it. But still, there are some of the experiences that we go through, it becomes life-changing for a lot of people that we may never get out of it. And it's like stories like this that women are going to watch and said, "Oh my God, this almost happened to me. Oh my God, I won't let this happen to me." And that's what we are talking about today. And as we dive and continue this conversation, before we bring it to the close, because we can go hours on this, and I would love to bring you back again. Before we close on this conversation, I want you to go back and tell us, number one, what is the lesson in your journey? If somebody is going through this right now, or to prevent someone from going through it, what will be the lesson that you have learned to share with someone?
It's pretty hard to narrow it down to one lesson. but
Lessons, maybe.
yes, for me, it's like I really didn't even know who I was. Even before I got married, I never looked at myself and asked, well, what's important to you, Rosie? What do you want? How do you want to live your life? And it's like when I created this, like the ultimate foundation redesign, that's what I call it. The ultimate foundation redesign. It's like, I didn't have a good foundation. I picked up values like you pick up seashells from the seashore. Just somebody said it. I picked up their beliefs and I just kept putting them on me. And when he would just insult me, I got covered up layer after layer. So now learning that when I have a voice, that how important it is for me to know what's important to me, to be able to ask for what I want, to be able to share, to know that I can share an opinion and I don't have to be beaten down for it, that it's okay. That kind love, it really is possible. That I know how to set healthy boundaries, that I can receive with grace, that I matter, and that no matter what anybody says, by definition, under God's grace, I am and you are always enough.
And love doesn't have to hurt at all.
Real love
is
kind.
Love
Real love is kind, not terrorizing.
Not terrorizing. And so if someone was to ask you right now, and they will be watching, Rosie, how did you go from that traumatic experience? What is one thing that led you where you are now?
When I was preparing the escape, and again, I knew nothing. I didn't know about personal development. I didn't know about mantras. I didn't know anything, right? But I came up with these thoughts, which I think I found out they're like mantras. And I said, it makes me tear up when I think about it. I said, my daughter and I deserve a happy and joyful life. I said, I don't have to be a martyr. I deserve a life. And I said them because I was so riddled with guilt planning this escape to get my life. And when I landed in the United States, I have never taken my freedom for granted, because I said, you know what? I deserve to live, and live in all capital letters. And I'm not going to I fought my way to get here. I'm not going to let that freedom just go to nothing. So I fought for me. I loved me. I became somebody who's proud of her and who knows who she is and who became confident like I've never before. Like, this is my life. This is your life. You matter. You matter. Your voice matters. And whatever you think, like there's no way out, you just don't know it yet. There's always a way out. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying when, but you can create a joyful life. And I'm living proof of it. I have been with the love of my life for over 5 years. The before and after me of domestic violence is unrecognizable to me, because I believe in my life.
One final word for you. One final word before we go. What do you think are the issues that are still facing women across the globe that we need to continue to do something about? To free these women, to live again, to have a life, to experience life, to enjoy life. What do you think? Few of the things that you think that are challenges that women are still facing in the world today.
I usually always end with this. You deserve to be treated with kindness, and it starts first by being kind to yourself. And that kindness takes courage, because the kind of kindness I talk about is knowing your values, asking for what you want, showing up with courage, taking that next step. That's what kindness is. It's being kind to yourself first and honoring who you are, because if you don't honor who you are, you can't expect anybody else to honor you. So first things first, be kind to yourself and say, I come first, always. Because when you lead with love, with yourself first, then you can love others and you can receive love.
Awesome. Before I get out of here, I want to talk about July 27th.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about that. What's so significant about that date?
Oh, thank you. July 27th is National Love is Kind Day, but we celebrate it internationally. And it's the date significance. Let's talk about the date significance first, and then how it came about. So July 27th is the day my daughter and I landed in San Francisco International Airport and got our physical freedom from domestic violence. And so that day is a day to celebrate that real love is kind, not terrorizing, that you deserve to be treated with kindness, that real love is kind and available to you and possible for you. And it's a global movement to share that when we have kinder, intimate relationships, we can create kinder families, and kinder families create kinder communities, and kinder communities create a kinder world. It becomes a win-win in everything. And that is a global mission to impact and inspire 100 million women to believe that they deserve to be treated with kindness, to believe that they can create a joyful life, to believe that they can find kind love after abuse.
Absolutely. Listen, before we go, don't forget to send me that flyer. Love is kind, not terrorizing. And everybody, this is the show that we do every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's empowering every single woman from America, Asia, Africa, Europe, and all over the globe. Because when we heal one, we heal everyone. And we cannot go when one woman is down. That is what we do on this show. When I am not doing this show, as I said, I'm over helping women create memorable stories through presentations to help them impact the world, to help them enroll their clients with ease. And listen, you want to share this story because these stories cannot impact anyone without you sharing it. This is why I'm here. This is why I bring my guests to share this story, because giving is in the sharing. So go ahead and share this story. Listen, Rosie, thank you so much for being here. I thank you for taking the time to help the audience, to help me, to help every woman across the globe. Until next time, Rosie, thank you so much. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Christy. I so appreciate being here. And they can reach out to me just at the loveiskindnetwork.com. I'll be there.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.